Good morning from not a cloud in the sky, Kansas City. One of those days here in town. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, presented by the University of Kansas Health System. This is the weekly show where we talk Kansas City Royals with the folks in the media who know them best. And today, as we try to have every Tuesday, Vahe, Gregorian, Lynn Worthy, and Sam McDowell. And we're going to talk Royals with you as well. Send us your questions and comments. We're going to spend the first part of the show talking about the outfield and what the Royals are going to try to do there for the rest of the season and then into next year. But first, if you happen to join us early, a little bit early, a few minutes early, you caught some of a new show that the Kansas City Star is putting together called SportsFeed. This was a 10-minute show, that included 3 segments. You started with a great video from our artist Neil Nakahodo about the Chiefs. It segued into a visual story about the Nigerian player that the Chiefs acquired. And Vahe Gregorian, of course, wrote the column that inspired that story. Had a little World Cup information there, and finally some Kansas State football recruiting. This is a show that's going to be produced by Monty Davis, Todd Feedback, and narrated by Randy Mason. And you'll see it this fall, several episodes. So looking forward to that. If you want to catch this pilot program, it's on YouTube. Just look up SportsFeed Kansas City or SportsFeed KC. So not to be confused with SportsBeat KC, I'll have you know. All right, Royals coming off a win. And I know this to be true because it's on the TV screen right to my left here. I'm watching the replay of the Royals beating the White Sox 6-4 at Kauffman Stadium yesterday. It was a single game, a makeup game. But the Royals, after losing 3 or 4 in Tampa Bay, came back and won the single game with the White Sox. Lynn, you were not there. You were working your way back from Tampa Bay. But I want to start with Drew Waters, who played center field and got the game-winning RBI, got a bases-loaded walk in the 8th inning to put the Royals ahead 5-4. So, Lynn, let's start there. Drew Waters, remind us how he came to the Royals, and what do we think his role is going to be, or his playing time is going to be in the final 38 games of the season?
Well, Drew Waters was the player that they acquired in exchange for the compensation round, the competitive balance round draft pick from the Atlanta Braves. So that trade that they made, the one that you don't usually see involving a draft pick, they made about a week before the draft. Drew Waters was one of the players. They actually acquired 3 players, but he was the main guy. He was the headliner, the potential center fielder of the future. I believe yesterday he was playing right field, but I assume at some point here in the future we'll see him in center field. I believe the plan is that he'll get some time in all of the outfield spots. But when they acquired him, the idea was this could be the guy. I mean, I think everybody on this show and probably a lot of people listening know that finding a full-time center fielder has always been something that's been in the mind of the Royals front office. Obviously, Michael Taylor is holding that down right now. But that position has been a key for them, something they focused on going back years and probably will continue to focus on. They think Drew Waters could potentially be that guy. He's been off to a good start at AAA since being acquired. And, really this last couple of weeks, I mean, we saw it, or at least we saw the first remnants of it in Florida on the road trip, talking about just the way they're going to use the roster and start taking a look at guys down the stretch here, whether that's the pitching staff or position players, guys in different roles. Different guys getting starts. I mean, this last few months, or I guess 6 weeks or 6.5, 5, whatever it is now, is going to be a lot of evaluating for the offseason and going into 2023.
Yeah, I know you had a conversation with J.J. Piccolo about it on this past road trip. We'll get to that also later in the show. But Sam and Vahe, you guys were out there yesterday and got to see Drew Waters' major league debut. There's a little bit of backstory, isn't there, Vahe, about him getting to the ballpark? There always seems to be, right? We always engage in that line of questioning about where you were when you got the call and how'd you get to the ballpark, and invariably there's a story involved.
It's so true, Blair. It's almost always a fun and memorable story, and the thing you want to hope is that it becomes part of something bigger than that, than just the moment for the guy. But really, it is unfailingly something worthwhile. And we got talking in the press box yesterday with Andy Rogers from MLB, was talking about that there's probably whole stories to be done about what do these guys even know when they get to the ballpark. Like there was a little mystery to the drop-off from the Uber for Drew Waters. But before I go on this, I want to go back to one quick point that you brought up, and we'll come back to this point more broadly, just about the idea of how they're going to determine playing time. As our friend and colleague Jesse Newell noted yesterday, I think Mike Matheny used the word spreadsheet as he described that. And when Jesse tweeted that out, his next tweet was, Royals Twitter is an angry Twitter. So it just struck me that there's more to be explored there, but also that it's hard for the Royals to say much right now that pleases anybody. Anyway, the question you asked me was just about kind of a little bit of a comic misadventure in some ways for Drew, with not knowing either being told or misunderstanding the starting time of the game and being told to be there at 2 when the game started at 1. Problematic for your debut. And just the vivid description he gave of waiting for Chick-fil-A from DoorDash and taking it with them but not being able to eat it, and then somebody telling him it's okay, you don't have to eat the cold Chick-fil-A, we've got a good spread here. The whole thing. It reminded me of the day we all enjoyed when Vinny Pasquantino got out there, and we saw his glove before we saw Vinny, and then Vinny came walking by in the dugout, and Sam McDowell and I, Lynn, I don't know if you were there, but we heard Vinny say, I have no idea what's going on. I keep that on my desk as sort of my own motto, which is all I need to say in this big burst of over-caffeinated comment.
Cheers to that. All right, you were out there, Sam, as well. It is kind of fun to hear these guys' stories, isn't it? These debut stories.
Yeah, I mean, and Drew Waters is one of the guys that, I mean, to heck with the fans, he's a guy we need to root for because he is a really good talker. So he's one of our guys now. But what's most interesting about Drew Waters to me is he's sort of representative of what the Royals have been able to do with some minor league hitters as of late. And I think he got here expecting, he came with an open mind, which I think was important. Like he gave himself up to Drew Saylor and his group and said, I don't feel good at the plate right now. Like, what do you guys have for me? And I think he was surprised to find out it wasn't swing mechanics, because he said he's been getting in the box, when he was with the Braves and their AAA, it's Gwinnett, right, Lynn? I think it's AAA and Gwinnett. And basically like thinking so much about his swing and the way his bat has to go through the zone. And he gets to the Royals and they're all about what we've written a lot about, particularly Lynn. It's about pitch hunting. And this is where you need to be looking for pitches. And, your swing got you this far, but here's how you get to the next level. And, his numbers speak for themselves. Now, his strikeout rate is the one thing that oddly did not improve a ton when he moved after the trade. His walk rate did, though. His power numbers have gotten significantly better. His OPS went from about 680 with the Braves to about 900 with Omaha. So I think, like I said, it's a good story, or a symbolic of the story of the way the Royals have gotten the rest of this young crop, from Omaha to Kansas City. And it's because they've revitalized the way that they view hitting in the minor leagues. And Drew Waters is just a great example of that. And God, if you can get your potential center fielder of the future for a competitive round balanced pick, I mean, that's a hell of a trade.
And one thing, talking about just what Drew Waters has done in the minors, it was funny too, because you mentioned it, Sam, was the day they made the trade, and we're talking to JJ Picollo, general manager, about acquiring Waters. And one of the things that he said that he thought that they could help him with it wasn't swing mechanics, like you said. It was actually swing decision. I think that phrase was one of the phrases that JJ used that day, was swing decisions. As in, obviously they saw that there was a high strikeout rate. And even, you mentioned the power numbers. I think I was having a conversation with somebody last week where I said, we were talking about Drew Waters, just talking about, how he's been playing. And I said, I know he's been hitting home runs. I said, the only things that I'm looking at when I look to see how he's doing in the minors is just sort of the strikeout and walks, because that number was just so out of whack that in Gwinnett with the Braves. Because I think the ratio, and it's small sample size right now with what he's done with the Royals, but I think with Gwinnett, the ratio was almost like 4-1 as far as strikeout to walk, whereas now it's down to like 2-1 in the small sample since he was in AAA with the Royals. And I know, at the time it sounded like they thought they could do some things with him with their hitting development people. It also sounded like they thought they might need to take some time with him. But I think because he got off to such a great start and that he, showed so much improvement, I think that's part of the reason that he's in the big leagues now, is because they want to make some evaluations of him, and it could impact how they approach this offseason. I don't think they've decided yet, but I think what he does down the stretch is going to decide if if that means that they might change their approach to how they're going to play the outfield next year, or whether that means he may be potentially looking at a spot on the big league club out of spring training. I don't think that was necessarily the thought when they acquired him, but the way he's gotten off to the start, I think that's now in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, it's I don't think Drew Waters would be up right now if the Royals were in a different spot in the standings. I think it is what Lynn just classified. I think it's an evaluation period now for Drew Waters. I mean, the strikeout rate, I still think is, we had these conversations with Nick Prado about, he's striking out too much in the minor leagues to think that he's going to be able to translate his full success to the major leagues. I still think that piece is a little bit of a concern. The walks that go with it are now different, because I think he's working his way deeper into counts because of this. He's hunting for specific pitches and not going after pitches on the edge of the strike zone. I think a lot of people, when they hear that phrase, think swinging at pitches out of the strike zone. The Royals are also focusing on which pitches in the strike zone should you be swinging at. And sometimes that means taking a strike on the edge of the zone. And that's one of the things I think Drew Waters has improved most, that you want to see how he's going to evaluate that at the major league level, because obviously you see a whole different class of pitchers here.
I thought the at bat that produced the walk that drove in the winning run was a terrific at bat. I mean, he took a strike on did he work at 3-0, then 3-1, took a strike that was on the kind of outside corner to make it full, and then took another pitch. I may have my sequence wrong here, but I know he took a pitch that was a called strike that was right on the box on the line, and then his ball four was just just an inch or two below the box. I think it was a really good take on his part to get the bases loaded walk.
I don't know how Lynn's not going to correct you and say plate appearances, because I know he wouldn't let me get away with calling that an at bat.
And Swanee would be right on you right there with that. There's no plate appearance. There's no at bat if it was a walk. Swanee, for however many years, was making sure that he yelled that one out in the press box for everybody. But as soon as you started saying it, that was as we started talking about his Sam started talking about his his plate discipline. I started thinking of that at bat, because I did see obviously the second at bat, or not the second at bat, but the second at bat with the bases loaded, the one that drew the walk that drove in the go ahead and run, the eventual winning run. And that was, again, we're talking about small sample sizes. He's played one day in the big leagues, but again, those swing decisions and I think in the first one, I think at that point it was 3-0, so it was 3-0. So you're probably taking anyway, but I think that last take, that one that was a breaking ball that was right there, semi borderline, obviously clearly below, but one of those spots where you could see a guy taking the pitch, and I think it was one of those ones that started strike and went to outside the zone. If nothing else, it's a good sign.
For sure. Hey, let's hear from Drew Waters. This was after the game on Monday, where he was, and he explains. I think this is where we hear his little adventure about getting to Kauffman Stadium.
It's hard to keep a secret. Yesterday, and I didn't know I was going to be here at today's game. I was told to be here at 2, and then this morning once I got up, they're like, you need to come in now. And I was like, am I in the lineup? And they're like, yeah. So I don't know. It's definitely, I'm excited. I think I like how it ended up turning out because I didn't have much time to think about what exactly is happening. But this is obviously a dream come true, and I'm excited to put on the Royals colors.
How about the way everything has turned out, coming from Atlanta to an organization that seems to have prioritized you as you're here so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things where you really just got to trust the big man upstairs and know that he's got a plan, and just to continue to keep your head down and go about work. So, like I said, obviously I'm excited. I'm excited to be here with the Royals, and I'm excited to make my major league debut with them.
Okay, is it just me, or should I think that everybody who who might be on the cusp of being called up should know when the team is playing a game? It doesn't have to be told it was a 1:00 game, but that's just me.
There was something a little funny in the whole thing, because the way he phrased it before the game, I wasn't there before the game, but Sam McDowell was. My understanding is he said somebody told him to be there at 2. What was unclear was whether who that person would have been and why he otherwise would have thought that. I mean, the oddity of the game is, of course, it's a Monday, non-holiday Monday makeup game. Somebody probably default thought it was a night game, but he did tell us after the game that he was the guy who used to lie to his mom about game time so he could be there earliest to be first in the cage. So I think he'll have a better system of double checking it now, at least anyway.
A good beat reporter would get to the bottom of this and find out who the culprit is that lied to him about the game time.
Well, I mean, a guy who was there on the spot clearly should have done some reporting. I mean, you talked to him. You were there. You're the only one of us who was there before the game. So I don't know why you don't already have this answer for us. Seems like a missed opportunity to me.
Well, I think we should just call it a conversation and blame the former SportsBeat Live participant on this, who now works in the front office of the Kansas City Royals. So with that little shot to Sam Mellinger, we'll go to a break, and let's hear from the University of Kansas Health System.
March 4th, 2015, I got out of the shower and felt a lump in my left breast.
We were able to quickly uncover that she had 2 subtypes of breast cancer, each of them requiring separate and unique treatment plans. This is why you come to the University of Kansas Cancer Center.
It is critical to be treated by a team of experts in that specific cancer type.
If you don't start with us, I think you'll have more questions than answers.
Why would you go anywhere else?
Okay, we're back on SportsBeat Live talking Royals with Lynn Worthy, Vahe, Gregorian, Sam McDowell, and you. Send us your questions and comments, and we'll talk Royals with you. Okay, Lynn, I got this list here. Michael A. Taylor, Kyle Isbell, Drew Waters, MJ Melendez, Hunter Dozier, Edward Olivares, Nick Prado, Brent Rooker. It's a lot of outfielders and a lot of candidates to play the outfield the rest of the season or into next year. You spent some time with JJ Piccolo last week, and you talked about the future of the Royals and into next year. And you said earlier that this season is going to largely about seeing these young guys play. Let's just keep it in the outfield right now. And it's a pretty broad question, but how might this play out for the final 38 games? Royals have 38 games left, a quarter of them against the Cleveland Guardians, by the way, 9 games left against Cleveland. But how does this play out? What are the Royals' objectives with all these candidates? Olivares, of course, is on the injured list, but the rest of them, they're going to try to find playing time for, and they're all relatively young. What's the plan?
As of right now, I believe the plan is just going to be to rotate guys. I think some of the at-bats will come later in games. One of the things that we saw last week, particularly in Minnesota and in Tampa Bay, was that a guy might start the game, and then when it got to certain situations, guys like Rooker, especially since they're so left-handed, would come in that pinch hit situation, and that's where he would get his at-bats and maybe finish the game. Sometimes he would come in just for that at-bat, and then they'd swap him out for a different fielder. But it's going to be a lot of starting the game and maybe not finishing the game, coming in as pinch hitters, and then different lineups each day. Obviously MJ, he'll get some at bats, probably a catcher if Salvi's DHing. The DH will probably also play into that with guys like Pasquantino and Prado, assuming that everything checks out with Pasquantino's shoulder. But yeah, it's going to be just a rotating. It's funny, I think Vahe mentioned earlier the tweet that Jesse had, because he used the term spreadsheet, but I think last week Matheny used the term matrix as far as, and I think in that time he was talking. It was in reference to the pitchers because, they had just brought up Colin Snyder and just sent down Max Castillo, who had just had a solid start, who's expected to be back when, the 15-day period runs up. There's going to be another roster move today because Jonathan Heasley's supposed to be making the start today, and right now he's not on the roster. So it's going to be a revolving door. We know that on the pitching side, but as far as playing time and just the lineup, it's going to be a revolving door. On the position side, particularly the outfield, because Michael A. Taylor's still going to get time, and he's still your best defensive center fielder. Drew Waters didn't bring him up here just to sit him. They want to see what they've got in him. Again, MJ's bat's got to stay in the lineup. Prado, if he's not going to be at first base, his bat's going to be in the lineup some. Kyle Isbell, is another guy who's been one of the top prospects, and he's gotten more time than most probably so far this season, just because he's been up probably a little bit longer. But he's another guy who, you got to get some time for him out there. So, and I think, and Dozier is a guy who, again, they'll get some time at DH. They could put him in the infield at either first base or third base, depending on, who else they've got on the field. So there's a little bit more options with him. But yeah, it's going to just be a rotating cast of characters. You're muted, Blair.
No, I was just testing you all. But I think Matheny should have stayed with Matrix over spreadsheet. There's something about Matrix. I can't see Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne starring in the spreadsheet.
You're right. Even if it's just to kind of ease the follower. You want something to sound a little more sophisticated. 20 years ago, spreadsheet probably sounded pretty out there, but
it's going to be a Word doc. It's going to be a Word document in a couple of weeks.
All right. So what's the ideal? Who wins? What's your starting outfield on opening day next year? Sam, why don't you or Vahe? What's best case scenario here?
I think MJ Melendez, Drew Waters, and I think the rest of this year, those are the two guys that you want to see in the lineup every day. I think Kyle Isbell needs to play occasionally, but I think because he started the year with them, I think we've seen enough of him to have a better idea of exactly maybe what you can get out of him. Drew Waters is more of a question mark, I guess, is what I'm saying at this point. MJ Melendez is more of just a certainty as part of your future. And then, I think even though he's struggling, Nick Prado's a guy you want to see at bats from, depending on, like Lynn said earlier, where Vinny Pasquantino's shoulder is, whether or not those are going to come at first base, or those are going to have to come in the outfield. Now, the uncomfortable part of that trio I just listed is two of those guys don't typically play the corner outfield spots. That's not where Nick Prado played until this year. It's not where MJ Melendez played until this year. And you're talking about a spacious outfield at Kauffman Stadium. It's not exactly a great defensive group out there, considering their lack of experience out there. But plate appearance wise, those are the three guys I would prioritize just getting at bats to.
Look, I think that's a great point. And one thing about those guys, let's stick with Melendez and Prado specifically. I mean, they're phenomenal athletes, right? We know that Prado's an unbelievable first baseman. But if the rest of this season's about anything, it's about doing all you can to see what X, Y, and Z look like. And boy, does it give them a little different range of motion, flexibility, whatever you want to call it, if you can kind of start to feel good about their capacities in the outfield while you still give them the at-bats. One way or another, they're going to want to retain some ability to move guys around, just because there's a couple, like the hinge of this in some ways is Prado and Pasquantino. I mean, ultimately, if you have them both on your team, you don't want, I think, Vinny to be relegated to DH, all the time, right? So you got to figure out some ways there. And I think, look, we've been kind of clamoring for this aspect of the season, right? This is all about 2023 and getting every look you can and developing every way you can to take an approach into that. What I wonder is, and maybe I'm not thinking of something here. I mean, whatever the future of Michael A. Taylor is, they kind of know what they have in Michael A. Taylor. I don't know what his time is going to look like down the stretch, but it seems to me it should take a back seat to the time of all these other guys they need to see.
You think that could be the case, Lynn?
Well, I don't think it's going to be he's going to be on the bench completely. I think he'll be in the rotation. I think it's going to be one of those things where he's not going to be out of the rotation. He's still going to be in there. He's still going to be, he's still, your center fielder. I think what the question becomes is in the off season, the question that you had asked talked about 2023. If Michael Taylor is still here and that, if they decide that Drew Waters is not necessarily ready to be your everyday guy, or if they decide that they want to hold on to Michael Taylor and that he's still going to be here next year, then I feel like he's probably going to be your center fielder. Now, if they decide that Drew Waters is ready and they feel like they can make a move there, they can afford to make a move there, then maybe Drew Waters is your center fielder. But if not, then Michael A. Taylor, the Gold Glover, who's coming off of a career year offensive, or who's in the middle of a career year offensively, really trailed off a little bit down the stretch, but Gold Glover, who's having one of his best years. I think, if you decide you want to move him and get something for him, that's one thing. But if he's still here, he's your center fielder, I think, next year. And then maybe Drew Waters is your right fielder. Again, the problem becomes you're still trying to get all these other guys in the lineup. The other thing that, I think people don't necessarily want to consider is that all these young guys that everybody's excited about, the chances are they're not all going to be on the roster at the beginning of next season. I mean, as much as people might want to just sort of like push this forward, it's like some of these guys may be back at AAA. Some of these guys, might still have to get their at-bats down there until they figure out how to sort things out at the big league level.
You mean they can't keep eight outfielders?
Well, you could try it. I mean, we have seen some outfield formations with 4 out there during the season this year. But it's going to get a little jammed. And I mean, we mentioned it, but sort of put it off to the side because he's injured right now. But we're not really factoring Edward Olivares into this equation either, who at times when he was healthy, and he's been hurt a couple times this year, but before he got hurt, was arguably the best hitter in the lineup aside from Andrew Benintendi at one point this season.
Absolutely. Okay, a lot of options for the Royals coming down the stretch and heading into next season. And that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you joining us. And big thanks to Lynn Worthy, Vahe Gregorian, and Sam McDowell, and to our producer, Monty Davis. Also a salute to University of Kansas Health System for their sponsorship. And if it's Tuesday, it's SportsBeat Live talking Royals, so we'll do it again next week. Until then, take care.